Are they definitely done with Daniel Jones from this point? And any shot that Dable is off the sidelines, meaning he gets fired before next season?
They have a general manager in Joe Shane. Every big move has to get approval by ownership. So, look, the bottom line is they don't know who their future quarterback is past this season. Tommy DeVito's clearly not the answer. They don't have Drew Lock's not the answer.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
Right here with you on Pro Football Today on SportsGrid. Odds in motion, trying to see what lines have moved throughout the week.
Never felt more comfortable in the set than I do for this year. I am ready. I'm just getting angry. The hot takes are going to be here all long, people. What in the world is going on in Miami, Dom?
It's not particularly anything to shy away from just because many people are on top of it.
Hot take.
I think this line is asking you once again to take New Orleans.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
A lot of concern, I would say, for Georgia in Carson Beck. 3 interceptions once again. His third 3-interception game in the last 5 for UGA.
You can argue if they had Alex Orji as their starting quarterback for Georgia, they would be perfect and unbeaten right now just by not turning the football over and running it with your talented backfield.
The early line, only on SportsGrid.
What can you say about Hunter? Besides the fact that he's got to be healthy. Remember, he had the shoulder injury that kind of limited him at, once he got into the end of the season. 17.9, 10.9 last year, and he should be, as usual, a double-double machine. He's got to be able to continue to show the ability to try and shoot the ball from 3.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
Yes, time to rise and grind on this glorious Wednesday morning right here on the Early Line, Sirius XM Channel 159 on the SportsGrid Network. I'm Donnie Rightside. He is Dubs Anderson, and over the next 3 hours, we're going to hit every single hot topic across the sports landscape. Yesterday, Dubsy, I waited in line 3.5 hours to vote. This show, only 3 hours. It's going to be light work today, baby. Let's bring the energy.
What up, Donnie? Happy hump day. I was watching that heads-up matchup last night. I was just sitting around waiting for the halftime entertainment. Never got it, but we've got a new boss up on top. Let's get after it. I was missing the NBA slate, but I tell you what, this is a fantastic Wednesday for you wagerers. There is no shortage, so excited.
Good stuff. We're in college basketball season, as everybody knows. Now, the NFL gets back into our lives tomorrow. Yesterday was the trade deadline. Many hot topics to go there. Looking at that full NFL slate. College football, oh my goodness. We actually have TV shows, which we're going to get into right now. And I'm talking about the TV shows that are showing the college football playoff rankings, Dubsy, in the 7 and 7, the hottest topics across the sports landscape. We'll start right there. Number 1, Oregon, with a perfect 9-0 record. Ohio State and Georgia, both with 1 loss, ahead of number 4, Miami, who is 9-0, filling out the rest of the slots. Texas, Penn State, Tennessee, Indiana, BYU, Notre Dame, Alabama, and Boise State. Dubsy, I can't stand that they have a television show that's going to change every single week, and they're just going to go for ratings and change the 12th team and the 13th team and the 11th team to the 10th team. Can't we just wait to watch this play out? But we do have that new top 12.
Yeah, and Donnie, it tells us everything we need to know from the committee, how much value they put on wins, losses, and style points. We were just getting used to seeing these players getting paid the bag there to play a little college football, and now we've got a new look here for the playoffs, but I agree with it. Oregon up on top there, Ohio State taking the top 2 spots there. So I think it's an exciting time for college football, just a month out from hitting the new look playoffs, but quack, quack, give us the Ducks with that auto bid.
Oh, they deserve to be there, no doubt about it. But if we are looking at that top 12, Dubs, you know what stands out? Not a lot of respect outside of Oregon for being undefeated here. You have Miami undefeated at 9-0, but 2 teams 7-1 above them. You also have undefeated teams in Indiana and BYU, with still Tennessee and Penn State, along with Texas, above them. We'll get into that a little bit later in the show, but now we see the rankings. Now we can let the debates begin here. Other news here in the NFL. Let's take a look at this. The Commanders trade for Saints Pro Bowl cornerback Marshawn Lattimore. I like this move for the Washington Commanders. Number 1, their defense is a little bit leaky. When he is healthy, talking about Lattimore, Lattimore, a really good cornerback. Nice move for the Commanders. They try to get in that playoff race and possibly win the NFC East.
Yeah, big thumbs up from deadline day there for the Commanders. This is a great ad. The 4-time Pro Bowler gives them a bit of pressure on the other side of the ball there. And for the Saints, a day after letting go of head coach there, Dennis Allen, no surprises in the direction they're going to try and move forward, get themselves back in the right direction for that salary cap. So not a great loss there for the Saints, but when you lose 7 on the bounce, this is going to be expected for the Commanders. Continue to overachieve and really impressed from what they've done there yesterday.
Yeah, New Orleans Saints, by the way, way over the cap next year, Dubsy. As you said, fired their head coach, looking to sort of rebuild at this point. It's the right move to make. You're not going anywhere this season. Try to recoup some draft picks here, try to shed some of that salary and move into next year. Who knows who's going to be the quarterback? A lot of changes certainly coming for the New Orleans Saints here. But let's take a look here at the Pittsburgh Steelers. I love me some Steelers. Let Russ cook. Why? Mike Williams heads over from the Jets to the Steelers. He didn't work out in New York. I don't know. Aaron Rodgers just didn't like him, blamed them from some losses here. He winds up with the Steelers along with the Packers' Preston Smith. The last thing we thought we needed was more pass rush for the Steelers, but they got it. Russ, Cook, and Mike Tomlin. Could we be headed to a deep AFC playoff run with the Steelers?
AFC North, up top of the divvy here. And this is, I guess, the day that we see the pretenders taking a sidestep from the contenders. But I think these are great additions. They bolstered the depth that the Steelers are going to need if they're seriously, considering making a playoff push. And all signs suggest that, yes, they're an absolute player here. So Mike Williams, he can be that deep threat, that downfield option. Not a great look there a couple of weeks ago. Aaron Rodgers didn't look so impressive. No surprises. He had to get the boot on deadline day. And welcome. This is your new home, and hopefully he thrives in new surroundings.
Extra weapons for Russ cooking out there. Love the running back position, like the wide receivers even more. Now, that bone-crushing defense now added to that already devastating pass rush. Good times could be there in Pittsburgh, because now we're going to focus on another opponent there in that AFC North, and that's the Baltimore Ravens. News coming from trades, not necessarily, but how about Lamar Jackson? Banged up a little bit these past 2 weeks. Couldn't show it there from his past game. He was absolutely fantastic. You got a short work week this week with a game on Thursday night against the Bengals. Lamar Jackson sitting out. Are we worried at all, Dubsy, that Lamar a little bit banged up coming into this Thursday night showdown? Dubsy, you there?
Lamborghini Lamar. Donnie, I got the old size there, the little one too. That's going to be on me. I feel like Lamar Jackson getting set for Thursday night football. Week 10 coming up here. He's going to be primed up for a big spot. They told us last week he was a little banged up. He came out with the perfect passer rating. It's week 10. Everyone's playing with a couple of niggling injuries. Lamar Jackson, he is ready for action there on Thursday night. Cannot wait to see this matchup.
Lamar Jackson looking for another MVP, Dubsy. And by the way, did you know he leads the NFL in total QBR, which means he's doing everything, making every right decision. No surprise. And as head coach John Harbaugh said after Tuesday's practice, Lamar is playing Thursday night, as we expect. He's not playing for a couple games, though. It's Joel Embiid suspended for 3 games for shoving a media member. The Philadelphia 76ers, we don't need him. We're like 5-1, 6-1 to start the season. No, the Sixers are one of the worst teams right now in the NBA on a West Coast swing. No Embiid for the next 3 games. Could the Sixers be 1-7, 1-8, 1-9 to start the season? It wasn't surprising to me they got suspended, because regardless of how upset you are, Dubsy, against anybody in the media when you're in professional sports, you can't lay hands on them. Embiid shoves a reporter. 3 games, gets suspended. I guess he can rest that knee even more now.
Yeah, and we saw this altercation taking place after that loss to the Grizzlies over the weekend. And I tell you what, it has been a really sluggish start here for the 76ers. They need JoJo back in the mix, but now being with that 3-game suspension, set to miss more time. We thought his opening night was going to be coming up here against the Clippers later this evening, but he has to wait until he's back to full billing and full health before they can actually put that suspension in place there. So maybe it looks like the Knicks that we finally get to see Joel Embiid, but I tell you what, he's going to have to get the rust and the cobwebs off in turn in trying to get this season moving in the right direction.
Dubsy, he should be rested and ready when he gets back to the court. But by the way, the Philadelphia 76ers the other night did lose in Phoenix, but got the almighty cover with Paul George back in the lineup. Just couldn't tie it up late here. We'll see what's in store for the Sixers, but it certainly hasn't been a great start to the season. It hasn't also been a great start to the season. The Denver Nuggets, 4-3 so far. Now, Aaron Gordon out multiple weeks with a calf injury. That bench, who's already not that good, is going to have to step up now and how many more minutes can Jokic play here, Dubsy?
Yeah, and for Aaron Gordon, he's been giving him some fantastic production through the first couple of weeks there, 15 and 6 boards through the first 7 games. Just got that big payday in the offseason, 4 years, $133 million for that contract extension. So hopefully it's not a long stint on the sidelines. They need all of their weapons in peace. The big fella can only do so much by himself. And for the Denver Nuggets, it doesn't get any easier going up against OKC for Happy Hump Day Wednesday night.
How about this? Dodgers Shohei Ohtani, shoulder surgery to repair a torn labrum here, but he should be ready to go by spring training. The big man fought through, stole a base there, tried to steal base, was thrown out, hurt that shoulder, still was able to play the rest of the series, albeit how effective he was, not really, but the Dodgers win the World Series, and he should be okay for next year, Dubsy.
Yeah, and that's all we need to hear, especially being out here on the West Coast. And I guess it explains that Ohtani was playing with a bit more injury and pain than we first thought. So no surprises. It was such a quiet ending to such a hot regular season. I mean, he gets his first ring, likely going to pick up another MVP. He's off a 50-50 year. Truly historic stuff there. So great news that's not so serious for Showtime Ohtani for the Dodgers. They're going to need him if they're trying to run it back.
Oh, they will run it back. Don't worry, Dubsy. If he can't start the season, just pick up Juan Soto, make a trade for like Bryce Harper or something. Maybe even get Aaron Judge to add to that Dodgers payroll, defer all the salary for 10 to 15 years, and run up the flagpole with a couple of World Series championships here. We'll see what happens with Ohtani, but it does look like he's coming back. We'll be coming back from the early line. We're going college football playoff, people. Wait till you see the results here and who might play who. We'll be right back.
Are they definitely done with Daniel Jones from this point? And any shot that Dable is off the sidelines, meaning he gets fired before next season?
They have a general manager in Joe Shane. Every big move has to get approval by ownership. So look, the bottom line is they don't know who their future quarterback is past this season. Tommy DeVito is clearly not the answer. They don't have Drew Lock's not the answer.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
Right here with you on Pro Football Today on SportsGrid. Odds in motion, trying to see what lines have moved throughout the week.
Never felt more comfortable in this set than I do for this year. I am ready. I'm just getting angry. The hot takes are going to be here all season long, people. What in the world is going on in Miami, Don?
It's not particularly anything to shy away from just because many people are on top of it.
Hot take.
I think this line is asking you once again to take New Orleans.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
A lot of concern, I would say, for Georgia in Carson Beck. 3 interceptions once again. His third 3-interception game in the last 5 for UGA.
You can argue if they had Alex Orji as their starting quarterback for Georgia, they would be perfect and unbeaten right now just by not turning the football over and running it with your talented backfield.
The early line, only on SportsGrid.
What can you say about Hunter? Besides the fact that he's got to be healthy. Remember, he had the shoulder injury that kind of limited him at, once he got into the end of the season. 17.9, 10.9 last year. And he should be, as usual, a double-double machine. He's got to be able to continue to show the ability to try and shoot the ball from 3.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
Hour number 1 in full effect right here on the early line, Sirius XM channel 159. It's Dub Anderson. It's Donnie right side here as we fight our way through a lot of things in college football, which started yesterday, Dubs. And I probably haven't preached to you on this topic. I can't stand the college football playoff shows because the one thing it's designed to do is just draw more eyeballs to college football, which I understand it's a ratings game. But the fact that they place teams in who have zero bearing, Dubs, over the next couple weeks here when teams win and lose and who's going to be those 10, 11, or 12 spots here in the college football playoff. But we did have the TV show yesterday, and we do have the results in. Oregon, number 1, 9-0, as we stated. Ohio State, Georgia, Miami, Texas, Penn State, Tennessee, Indiana, BYU, Notre Dame, Alabama, and Boise State are the top 12. I'll start with this question first for you, Dubsy. Any surprises as it relates to maybe who's been left out or where some of these teams sit in that top 12?
Yeah, I think you teased it off the top there, Donnie. A little surprised that some of the undefeated teams aren't sitting a little higher. Miami taking that 4 spot. They're sitting at 9-0 for their campaign. Indiana and BYU taking out 8th and 9th spot here, respectively. But I guess for us, it's more of a gauge of how the committee are going to see some of these big teams and some of these big matchups going through the final month of football. I agree with Oregon, the Ducks being in that top spot. I like the look of Ohio State and suddenly for Georgia at 7-1, a nice little path opening up for them, taking out that 3 spot, getting that 2nd seed there with Miami sitting in that 4 spot. So a little surprised, as you highlighted there, Donnie. It really doesn't have a great impact, but I guess it sort of gets us out of our seats saying, hey, there's only a month left of college football before we hit this new look playoffs. I'm still a little intrigued of how it's all going to look, how it's going to feel. I mean, I was just getting used to how things were a little different here in the college football landscape. Yeah. Players getting paid, NIL deals going left, right, quarterbacks on the chopping block. But, I guess that was the big takeaway for me. But no surprises who's up top.
Yeah, you take a look at those top 2 there. It's Oregon and Ohio State, but then you take a look at the odds market here. Oregon is the number 1 team, plus 450 to win a national championship. Georgia actually coming in with the college football rank at number 3, sitting at a plus 350 price to win that. If I do have, because college football typically, Dubsy, if you are a Power 5 team, they used to really rely on what your record actually is. You play the football games, and if you don't have any losses in a Power 5 conference, regardless of how tough it is, you usually get a catapult up to the top of the standings. But I do agree with the committee technically is doing. Like Indiana, I blasted them a little bit early in the week, more of a sarcastic, but they haven't played anybody. So rightfully so. Yes, they're in the playoff, which is the design, but they sit in that 8th spot at 9-0. BYU sits there at 8-0. Quality football team, unbeaten there. Also, the Miami Hurricanes sit at number 4. Now, I am a Hurricanes fan, but I'm almost an unbiased fan as well because I say to myself, I don't know if they're as good as Oregon. I don't think they're as good as Ohio State. Georgia is really good. Miami's had some close encounters in the ACC, but still, Miami is unbeaten. But the great part about this is, Dubsy, we're not saying like, ooh, is Miami going to drop down to 5 or 6 and maybe not make it into the playoff or 7 or 8? I love the fact that there's 12 teams here because I'm not upset that Miami is 9-0 and sitting in that 4 seed. I'm also not upset that Indiana, BYU are unbeaten and technically, if it was last year, would be out of the playoff. I think that would be unfair. So for me, looking at this overall, I don't mind this one bit. So if we're looking at that top 12, Dubsy, are you angry at any of these teams? Or also, more importantly, you look at number 13. SMU, 14 A&M, 15 LSU. There's a lot of games coming up on the schedule. Is there somebody outside of that top 12, Dubsy, you're looking at right now like, ooh, you know what? I think they can climb into that top 12.
Yeah, and I think that's going to cause most discussion moving through the next couple of weeks there. You know, for Bama having 2 losses for their program for the season, obviously they bring, you know, a lot of, credentials, X factor. It's the playoffs. We're going to have Bama in the mix. But they've played some good football after a couple of shaky losses there. I think the Aggies, Texas A&M, in that 14th spot. You know, they're also sitting at 7-2 there. SEC play has been pretty strong. It was a massive wake-up call against South Carolina, but hopefully they don't lose too much stock from dropping that one. They've got 3 games coming up here. New Mexico State, that should be a get-right game for the Aggies, and then they get set to square off against Auburn in Texas. That's going to be the referendum game if they're the real playoff contenders that I absolutely hope. So from the outside looking in, I'd say it was Texas A&M. Didn't like what I saw from that last loss, but hopefully that was the wake-up call because right now this is where you want to be starting to build that momentum, not from what you have had the last 3, 4, 5 weeks. This is where you got to get things going in the right direction, settle on who's going to be your starters in those key positions and try and make a bit of a run.
A November to remember in college football, no doubt about it. But let's get ahead. Let's have a little bit of fun with this, Dubsy. The bracket preview right now of who would be playing who if the season ended today. Here's what I love. The home teams here, the higher-rated teams will be home teams. You want to talk about theater on campus, playoffs on campus, phenomenal. Ohio State, Boise State. Does that really tip the scales for me? Not necessarily, but take a look at the next 2 games. Texas, number 5, at home, hosting Alabama. Penn State at home versus Notre Dame. I've talked about this ad nauseum for like the past year, saying, can you imagine State College, Pennsylvania, 110,000 plus fans absolutely screaming in late November, early December in cold weather with a home Penn State playoff game? That would be unbelievable ratings bonanza. Tennessee at home to host Indiana out of the Big Ten. I love this, and I just want to take the bowls out of the equation where the higher seeds then are going to play home games, quote-unquote, and bowl games. Keep everything, Dubsy, on campus until you have the national championship game and rotate the cities. But I love this first-round projection. It's going to be so much fun to watch these teams in playoff mode in front of their home crowds.
And teasing that, it's all about name, image, likeness, NIL. Imagine the money this is going to infuse into college football. Adding a couple of scintillating matchups and weeks and rounds here for the new look in the college playoffs. Imagine the Longhorns going against the Crimson Tide down in Tuscaloosa, Austin. It'd be absolutely must-see TV. So for Texas, Bama, a couple of story programs. I guess that's always been the tough pill to swallow over the last couple of seasons, just sitting there with 4 teams in the college playoffs. You're thinking, well, I'd rather see these guys being in the mix. What about if they could just step up to that next gear? We're going to get the chance to see all of them in the mix. If you're not good enough to be sitting in the top 12, I don't care who's on the committee, who's coming up with their vote. You have not been good enough.
And imagine, again, the money for the campuses, like Penn State, 110,000 season tickets sold, all the beer and food sales and the parking prices, millions and millions and millions of dollars for those teams. We'll see how it plays out, but we're excited for it. Let's talk national championship picture. Who's going to win this damn thing, Dubsy? We'll be right back and talk about it next.
Are they definitely done with Daniel Jones from this point? And any shot that Dable is off the sidelines, meaning he gets fired before next season?
They have a general manager in Joe Shane. Every big move has to get approval by ownership. So look, the bottom line is they don't know who their future quarterback is past this season. Tommy DeVito is clearly not the answer. They don't have it. Drew Lock's not the answer.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
Right here with you on Pro Football Today on SportsGrid. Odds in motion, trying to see what lines have moved throughout the week.
Never felt more comfortable in this set than I do for this year. I am ready. I'm just getting angry. The hot takes are going to be here all long, people. What in the world is going on in Miami, Don?
It's not particularly anything to shy away from just because many people are on top of it.
Hot take.
I think this line is asking you once again to take New Orleans.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
A lot of concern, I would say, for Georgia and Carson Beck. 3 interceptions. Once again, his third 3-interception game in the last 5 for UGA.
You can argue if they had Alex Orji as their starting quarterback for Georgia, they would be perfect and unbeaten right now just by not turning the football over and running it with your talented backfield.
The early line, only on SportsGrid.
What can you say about Hunter? Besides the fact that he's got to be healthy. Remember, he had the shoulder injury that kind of limited him at, once he got to the end of the season. 17.9, 10.9 last year, and he should be, as usual, a double-double machine. He's got to be able to continue to show the ability to try and shoot the ball from 3.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
Dubs and Donnie in the morning right here on the early line for a Wednesday right here on the SportsGrid Network, Sirius XM channel 159. Dubs, I'm taking a look now at the college football national championship odds, which lists the Ohio State Buckeyes plus 330, Georgia Bulldogs plus 350, Oregon plus 450, Miami 6-1, and then, Texas 6-1, and then Miami 12-1. You said, that looks a little bit interesting. Well, let's take a look at that along with the college football playoff rankings, because we're looking at the rankings as Oregon 9-0 and number 1, but Oregon third in the rankings at plus 450. Ohio State who sits in second place in the college football rankings, is actually number 1 on the FanDuel Sportsbook to win the national championship with the odds price of a plus 330. You even take a look at Miami, as I just brought up, as a 12-1 price. They sit 4th overall here in the standings here for the college football ratings. But then again, Texas, who is behind them, has much better odds to win the national championship. So people saying, you know what? I'm going to put my money on Ohio State. I don't care what those rankings are. I think they're the best team. So let's start right up at the top. Ohio State, number 1 on the FanDuel Sportsbook, regardless of how they sit in the playoff rankings. Do you agree with that, Dubsy?
No, I don't. And, you look towards their matchup earlier this season. It was Oregon who got the chocolates. I know it was a close one, 32-31. I feel like Indiana are being disrespected by the odds makers here. If you think they are exactly what their record suggests, then they're a much better team than a 30-1 long shot. I feel like it really will be a collision course coming up here for the Big Ten in that championship game. You look at who they do have on tap here for Ohio State. They'll square off against Purdue, Northwestern, and then they get to take on Indiana before Michigan. So they've got a pretty tough run in here for the final month of football. Plus 330. I think it's a little short. No surprises. Georgia is sitting there in the mix there. But I think the Ducks have been fantastic. They've picked up some style points. They've shown us that they can mix it with some of the best metal in college football. And I think taking that top billing yesterday and still being third, fourth choice there in the betting market, that's probably the price for me. Currently sitting second in the Big Ten standings, 6-0 in conference play, 9-0 for the season, right alongside Indiana still being undefeated there. So I like the look of the Ducks. I think the Hoosiers are being slightly undervalued. I think Ohio State just a little short there, Donnie, at plus 330.
Yeah, Ohio State and Oregon are another collision course to play here before the college football playoff. But then you take a look at some of the other odds out here. Like, again, I like Miami, but I do think it's right that they sit in the odds market here in 5th place at 12-1. The offense can beat anybody in the nation and go toe-to-toe with them. The defense, it's clear, Dubsy, needs some help from Miami, and I don't know if that's going to be resurrected. Couple somewhat decent games left on the schedule. Let's just say it's SMU in that ACC championship game. They have a great offense. That'll probably be a high-scoring affair, but 12-1 price seems about right. I don't know if the defense is up to the task to say, okay, we're going to go toe-to-toe with Georgia, Ohio State, and let's just even say Oregon or Texas for that matter here. So price points below Miami at 12-1. You see Alabama 16-1, Tennessee 16-1, Penn State 20-1, Indiana 30-1, along with Notre Dame at that same price. Are there any flyers, Dubsy, that you might be taking a look at outside that top 5 with Alabama, Tennessee, Penn State, Indiana, and Notre Dame?
Yeah, I think it'd be looking squarely at the SEC there. The Volunteers still sitting in that 7th spot, 4-1 in conference play. They've been pretty strong for their campaign. I think that's probably the price play for me, taking a look at how they close out the season. They'll have a bit of a test there coming up against Georgia. So Georgia at plus 350, Tennessee at 16-1. That's a bit of a discrepancy, but obviously the Volunteers would have to come up in a massive spot in trying to take them down, but you'd obviously lose a lot of that price point there. So I think it's the Volunteers for me. If you are bullish on the Aggies, that they can turn around after that big loss we saw last out and make a bit of a run. They're sitting right on the bubble there. They'd be the big long shot play for me at the FD Sportsbook. I think they're the sleeper coming out of the SEC, and I do think they've got what it takes to scare a couple of these big blue chip opponents as they move through the final month.
How about some of those independent blue chip opponents as you go through? And obviously you see Notre Dame sitting there with a big price at 30-1. If it ended today, based on the television show yesterday for the college football playoff rankings, they would be in, which is wild to think about, where they had that loss at home to NIU early in the season. And most, including myself, were saying, Dubsy, the uphill climb is just too much, because you figure everybody would have to have 2 losses before they get back in because they lost to NIU at home. They're playing some of their best football of the season right now. Any thoughts on Notre Dame as a 30-1 price getting in there?
I don't mind that, Donnie. And what's working in favor for them is the points they can put up. I mean, they put up half a century, a 51 piece on Navy. It was 31 against Georgia Tech prior to that, and Stanford absolutely beat the brakes off. And when you can put up that many points and you've got a pretty favorable schedule, things are looking up for the Fighting Irish.
We're making money moves next. The AFC North trades. How did they work out? Find out next.
Are they definitely done with Daniel Jones from this point? And any shot that Dable is off the sidelines, meaning he gets fired before next season?
They have a general manager in Joe Shane. Every big move has to get approval by ownership. So, look, the bottom line is they don't know who their future quarterback is past this season. Tommy DeVito's clearly not the answer. They don't have it. Drew Lock's not the answer.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
Right here with you on Pro Football Today on SportsGrid. Odds in motion, trying to see what lines have moved throughout the week.
Never felt more comfortable in this set than I do for this year. I am ready. I'm just getting angry. The hot takes are going to be here all season long, people. What in the world is going on in Miami, Don?
It's not particularly anything to shy away from just because many people are on top of it.
Hot take.
I think this line is asking you once again to take New Orleans.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
A lot of concern, I would say, for Georgia in Carson Beck. 3 interceptions once again. His third 3-interception game in the last 5 for UGA.
You can argue if they had Alex Orji as their starting quarterback for Georgia, they would be perfect and unbeaten right now just by not turning the football over and running it with your talented backfield.
The early line, only on SportsGrid.
What can you say about Hunter? Besides the fact that he's got to be healthy. Remember, he had the shoulder injury that kind of limited him at, once he got into the end of the season. 17.9, 10.9 last year, and he should be, as usual, a double-double machine. He's got to be able to continue to show the ability to try to shoot the ball from 3.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
Deadline day yesterday in the NFL. Donnie Rightside, Dubs Anderson. You're watching This Morning Radio on the SportsGrid Network, Sirius XM channel 159. I liked the moves yesterday. Did we get seismic shifts? Like, oh my goodness, the balance of power is changing. Not necessarily, Dubs, but a couple teams fortified themselves for a playoff run. Let's keep it first in the Steel City. You see the Pittsburgh Steelers, they acquire Mike Williams at wide receiver from the New York Jets. Let's start right there. Mike Williams used to be a Charger, a great football player that sometimes getting injured would hamper his seasons. Looked like it was going to be a fresh start with the Jets, who needed another outside wide receiver to go along with Garrett Wilson and Aaron Rodgers coming back. It looked like a match made in heaven for the New York Jets. And it was an absolute disaster. A $10 million contract for one season, only lasted a few games, and Aaron Rodgers blaming him for running wrong routes and interceptions that took place and incomplete passes. He now finds himself in Pittsburgh, who were in need, Dubsy, of a number 2 wide receiver. So you see Pickens on one side, Williams on the other, Russell Wilson at quarterback. How do we grade this move for the Pittsburgh Steelers and big Mike Williams?
I mean, it's going to be a D- if you ask Aaron Rodgers, right? Mike's washed up. Everything is on his fault. He can't run the right routes. Get out of here. This is a great addition for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Absolutely love it. They're looking for a bit of depth. They're looking for a couple of options. And suddenly, sitting up top of the AFC North, just besting out the Baltimore Ravens, the passing game is looking nice, Donnie. It's looking efficient. Yeah. Danger Russ is turning back the clock and getting it downfield, whether he's the 2, whether he's the 3. I think this is a fantastic piece, and I think it's savvy business here from Mike Tomlin. Considered being one of the best minds in the game. He can see exactly what he's working with. It's not a flashy, it's not a jaw-dropping, high-octane move for the Steelers offense, but I don't think it needs to be. I just think it gives them another option, and suddenly with a different element on offense, I think it only bodes well for their chances trying to make a bit of a playoff push here. So absolutely love this move for the Steelers in adding Mike Williams. Also love the pressure they're going to get there with Preston Smith as well. So in terms of the grade, I would give it a B+. And it was one of the best from what we saw there on deadline day.
I do. I'm telling you, I'm turning into somewhat of a Steelers fan. Sometimes outside of my Eagles fandom, I say, okay, which team am I going to latch on to? Because I think all the moves that Mike Tomlin is making during the season here have been hit on. Now, the schedule is going to get a little bit tougher now, as what we saw the past couple weeks. But I do believe the Pittsburgh Steelers certainly a playoff contender. And if you just look at that defensive line now, bringing the heat, Highsmith on one side, Watt on the other, Cam Hayward, one of the best defensive tackles, if not the best in football right now adds another pass rusher. We didn't see that one coming. That's great. They're fortifying their talent on defense, which is usually the calling card of the great Pittsburgh Steelers teams. Let's keep it moving here in the same division, because the Ravens, they acquired Tre'Davious White. You might be saying a couple of years ago, Tre'Davious White might have been the best cornerback in football. Injuries have derailed that, but certainly finding himself buried on the bench out there in Los Angeles, he finds some hope, because why? The Ravens have been quite a sieve on the back end here lately. If they can get anything out of Tre'Davious White, I really like this move for the Ravens here, Dubs.
Again, and I feel like this is a nice little buy low spot in White. You really don't have to have him coming in, giving you a lot of production, being that superstar that we thought he absolutely once was. They've got all the weapons in place. They're arguably now one of the best rosters in football. Preseason was all about the 49ers, but you look at the offense and on the defensive side, which has been a bit of a concern over the last month. They've got to stop other teams putting up so many points, because I don't care how many you want to try and score up. Once we get to the playoffs, it is a different beast. It is a different kind of gravy. So I love this addition for the Baltimore Ravens. I'd give this one a solid B. And I tell you what, this could be the one where we're sitting back in 2-3 weeks saying, actually, that was a fantastic little add-on there. Absolutely flying like a Raven with those new wings. Let's turn it from a solid B to maybe a little A-. So like this ad.
I like this Ravens team. And Dubs, we've talked about it ad nauseum, right? The AFC North is absolutely built. Outside of Cleveland, which we were hoping could maybe compete this season, doesn't look like that's the case. The other three teams, which include the Bengals, trying to fight their way back in playoff contention, should be a great game to watch on Thursday night. And also, if you're the Ravens secondary, yes, it is banged up here. You're going to get tested. Joe Burrow can certainly sling it, as well as a couple of those wide receivers with Jamar Chase. Don't think we're getting T. Higgins back yet on Thursday night, but Chase and that offense last year was moving against that porous Ravens team. Maybe they can recreate that in division to get a massive win against Baltimore. We'll certainly see if that happens. And also, the Bengals acquiring Khalil Herbert at running back from the Chicago Bears, who had a little bit of a logjam at running back, so I don't mind the move. And also, due to injuries outside of Chase Brown, it looks like the Bengals found their number 2 running back in Herbert. A solid move for them to add some depth.
Yeah, a solid move. And you've always going to be trying to fear the run, set that table with the rushing attack. And for the Bengals, Zach Moss set to miss a bit of time here. Khalil Herbert certainly has plenty of upside, really wasn't seeing a high volume of production over there in Chicago. So I think this is a great add-on. I think we can expect to see Herbert getting in the mix here for Thursday Night Football. It's a tough matchup, but this is the team, Donnie. They've been sneaking under the radar. I know they've only got 4 wins so far for the year, but it feels like the Bengals are absolutely getting set to make a bit of a charge. Joe Burrow scares me. I like this out of Khalil Herbert, and they've still got some of the best, offensive weapons in the game right now. So Thursday Night Football, fantastic matchup. Khalil Herbert gives them the depth that they need in that running back position. I would give this one a solid B, B-, but certainly not a step in the wrong direction. At this time of year, you need your running backs, you need your bell cows getting out there to get the reps in.
Dubsy, all Mike Tomlin does is in the regular season is win, win, win. And it looks like he's going to do that again this year, extending that crazy streak of we don't have losing seasons around these parts. If we take a look at the updated outlook, the wins now, 9.5. I think they could be on headed to double-digit plus. The playoffs, look at that price point, people. A minus 375, feel like a lock to get there. You look at the AFC North title, the AFC title, and the Super Bowl odds at a 35-1 price. But let's look also at the Pittsburgh Steelers schedule. Liked what they've done. Of course, they were supposed to beat the Raiders, and they did. Of course, they were supposed to beat the bad Jets, and they did, even though they were struggling in the game. 15-6, they were down till Russ turned it on over the final 3 quarters. The Giants, you're supposed to beat them. But here we go, Dubsy. Next couple weeks, at the Commanders, and then home to the Ravens. You get the Browns on the road, which you should be able to handle after that. But then it turns into the Bengals, who are still fighting for their playoff lives. Then you're going to have later in the Eagles on the road. You're going to have the Ravens on the road. You're going to end the season with the Chiefs at home and the Bengals. So that 9.5, where we sit right now on the Pittsburgh Steelers, how does that look to you so far with 6 wins on the board?
I'll tell you what, these odds makers, they're sharp, Donnie. Can we get 4 more? You take a look at the bulk of their schedule for the back half of the regular season going on the road, and it doesn't get any easier coming up this week. The hottest team in football, the Commanders, then you're flying against the Ravens, and if you look at the Browns, they can't get any worse. They're only going to improve, and you've got them in 2 of the next 5 games there. So I'd be leaning towards the unders, Donnie, at 9.5. I don't want to be that guy. I know the Steelers is going to be, one of your teams that you're banking on for, but I just feel Russell Wilson has been playing some really good football. I'm going to give him his flowers where flowers are due, but I just think when he's tested in a couple of big spots, he still makes some silly decisions, and I just think that will be enough to come undone in a big spot, and then the pressure turns back into being saying, well, do we stick with Russ? Do we get Justin Fields back in the mix? I don't think the pressure is going to help that offense one bit, and with a really tough schedule and trying to decipher where they're going to pick up their 4 wins, if they grab one against out of the 2 games going against the Browns, outside of that, I mean, look at the way they finish here, Donnie. Eagles, Ravens, Chiefs, Bengals. I'll give them 1 win from here to their house, but I cannot see how they pick up 4 more, so I like the unders for the Steelers.
Oh, come on, Dubsy. Hashtag
I'm sorry, Donnie.
Let Russ cook, and also
No,
Russ will run the table. If Russ runs the table, Dubsy, I have a $25 bet, big me, right? 400 to 1 price on Russ to win the MVP. It pays back $10,000 if that happens. But you know what probably does need to happen? Him running the table and a lot of people getting hurt, Dubs.
Yeah, and that included with my feelings, Donnie. Happy to have egg on the face in this one. This is where you want to be, Donnie. Show me a little something. They've put themselves in a fantastic spot, and credit to Mike Tomlin. I mean, that winning record, it's a winning record season in, season out for a very good reason.
More trade deadline deals. We're only getting started on the early line. It's Dubs and Donnie. We'll be right back.
Are they definitely done with Daniel Jones from this point? And any shot that Dable is off the sidelines, meaning he gets fired before next season?
They have a general manager in Joe Shane. Every big move has to get approval by ownership. So, look, the bottom line is they don't know who their future quarterback is past this season. Tommy DeVito's clearly not the answer. They don't have Drew Lock's not the answer.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
Right here with you on Pro Football Today on SportsGrid. Odds in motion, trying to see what lines have moved throughout the week.
Never felt more comfortable in this set than I do for this year. I am ready. I'm just getting angry. The hot takes are going to be here all season long, people. What in the world is going on in Miami, Don?
It's not particularly anything to shy away from just because many people are on top of it.
Hot take.
I think this line is asking you once again to take New Orleans.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
A lot of concern, I would say, for Georgia in Carson Beck. 3 interceptions. Once again. His third 3-interception game in the last 5 for UGA.
You can argue if they had Alex Orgy as their starting quarterback for Georgia, they would be perfect and unbeaten right now just by not turning the football over and running it with your talented backfield.
The early line, only on SportsGrid.
What can you say about Hunter? Besides the fact that he's got to be healthy. Remember, he had the shoulder injury that kind of limited him at, once he got to the end of the season. 17.9, 10.9 last year, and he should be, as usual, a double-double machine. He's got to be able to continue to show the ability to try and shoot the ball from 3.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
Expectations heading up here. Dubs and Donnie in the morning right here on the Sports Grid Network. We're continuing to talk action in the NFL, even though there's no games. Yesterday was the trade deadline. I thought maybe the most impactful moves we're going to talk about right now. It starts in Washington. Marshawn Lattimore, superstar cornerback of the New Orleans Saints, who are going nowhere, make a move to try to recoup some draft capital for the next couple of years. As it's apparent, they're probably rebuilding. But the Washington Commanders coming into the season with a lot of expectations, but would they be able to meet those? They lose opening day in blowout fashion to the Buccaneers. Look, they're just not ready. Maybe it's going to take them a year. Then they rip off 4 straight games before losing to the Ravens, only by a touchdown on the road, which is no shame in their game. Then ripping off 3 straight victories after that to sit 7-2 in first place in the NFC East. If there's any question marks about Washington, really it's on their defense. They fortify a corner position if Lattimore can heal up that hamstring injury. I really like this move for the Commanders, Dubsy.
Yeah, absolutely love. This is this could be an A grading, maybe an A-, 4-time Pro Bowler. So you know exactly the kind of leadership, veteran experience that you're bringing into a locker room. And for a side like the Commanders, this is going to bode well for them, trying to build a bit of confidence at the back end of this year. They've been playing some fantastic football. And, I mean, for Lattimore, look at how his season started in contrast to the Commanders. The Commanders, well, we thought it was going to be another long year for Washington. For the Saints, they start off soaring, Donnie, through the first couple of weeks, and then it turns into an absolute disaster. So, you know, one man's trash is another man's treasure. And for Marshawn Lattimore, he's absolutely going to be thriving going into a new building here for the Commanders, where he probably will inherit a bit of a leadership role. The only concern would be that lingering hamstring issue that we've seen through the first half of the season. He's already missed a couple of games, so certainly needs to get that right to be a part of the full equation here for the Commanders. But you got to love what you've seen at this point of the year. I mean, offense is up there with the very best of them in the NFL. They've just got to try and keep the points down on the other side of the park, and I think Lattimore's going to come in and give them a very good chance in trying to do so. So for the Saints, they're selling the farm. The Commanders looking like they're absolutely in control.
Bye. And by the way, they're going to get checked the next 2 weeks, too. You would have to have your A-plus performance. Why? The Steelers are coming to town with a lot of momentum. And then a Thursday night showdown in the city of brotherly love that could be up for grabs for the NFC. The Philadelphia Eagles will take on the Washington Commanders. And the boys will be live in studio for that one. No bias on that game. Kevin and I, Eagles fans, no bias. You're going to get it straight right down the middle there. But I'm looking forward to that game, no doubt about it. How about the Lions? They're my pick in the NFC. Not my Eagles. The Lions are my pick to get to the Super Bowl. They add exactly what everybody thought they were hunting for. Aiden Hutchinson goes down. They go out and acquire pass rushing specialist, I should say, Zadarius Smith. How about that move here? So Hutchinson, you're not going to replace him. This helps. It adds to the depth here. Can I say my Lions? I love my Lions now, and I love that move.
Hey, can I say our Lions, Donnie? I love this for our Detroit Lions. I think this is fantastic. Yeah. I'm in there. Let's get this thing rocking and rolling. And I think they're one of the best teams in football. I think it was going to be a tough ask for Dan Campbell and the Lions to look back if they were to go and win the Super Bowl and say, you know what, we got it done without our best player on this team, one of our best edge rushers there in Hutchinson. They certainly had to make a move. This was the team that we were sitting back waiting for, and Zadarius Smith coming across there from the Dogs. This is a great piece. He can play either side of the line. He's versatile. He can get that hand down in the dirt if they need him to. He comes in with a real gritty style of football here. So for the Detroit Lions, they don't need anything else on offense. They needed a little something on the defensive side, and they absolutely get it here in spades. So this was a fantastic ad, probably one of the best additions that we saw here on deadline day. This is nothing short of an A for our Detroit Lions, one of the best teams in football and flying high of that NFC North.
Absolutely. Like in this segment here, we're talking about that Commanders move from Marshawn Lattimore. It's 1 and 1A between those two moves, between the Lions getting Zadarius Smith and the Commanders getting Lattimore. Love to see it. Both of those two teams improving. Didn't give up a ton for those, but certainly would be able to provide dividends on the field. Let's look at the Cowboys. All in, baby. All in. Oh, Jonathan Mingo. All in on Jonathan Mingo coming back. Why? Because you're taking a look now at CeeDee Lamb, banged up with an AC joint injury. Expected to play this weekend against the Philadelphia Eagles, but they are already banged up at wide receiver. No Dak Prescott here. Was this the promises that were made in the offseason to Cowboys fans? They're all in. Mingo or bust now.
I think this could be the catalyst for the Dallas Cowboys to turn around their season. They don't need Dak. They don't need CD. They need Jonathan Mingo. What are we doing here, Donnie? How did this come to be for Week 10 in the NFL? What happened to the Dallas Cowboys? And you can get set, Cowboys fans, because you're up against it again here, going against the Eagles. For Mingo, I would say he's all right. I would say he's just okay. He's certainly not going to bring much to the table without a star quarterback throwing in the ball. Who's it going to be? Cooper Rush? Do we get Trey Lance back into the mix? It has been an absolute failed attempt here from the Dallas Cowboys. They can continue to smash as many tablets on the sidelines as they want, Donnie. They're not going to turn this thing around with Mingo or whoever else they want to bring across to get in the mix here. It's been a terrible campaign thus far, and I don't see it getting any better with Jonathan Mingo coming across from the Carolina Panthers.
And by the way, Dubs, Sunday, Dak Prescott gets hurt, leaves the game with a hamstring injury, can't finish that game. So he goes to the post-game press conference. Yeah, I think I should be able to be back tomorrow. You watch Mondays here on the early line to get the information you need, because yes, we have Dr. Chow, but you also have Dr. Donnie that said he's not playing. He's going to at least be out this week. We didn't have to wait till later in the day, the confirmation that he might be missing 3, 4, 5, or 6 weeks, and they're contemplating IR for Dak Prescott. But you can't get this at a worse time. 3 straight losses: Lions, 49ers, and Falcons. 3 of those teams, they're probably all going to get to the playoffs, or at least get very close if it's on the Niners' perspective. Let's just say they get even more banged up. But look at the next couple weeks, Dubsy. It's the Eagles, the Texans, and the Commanders without Dak Prescott as your quarterback. Is it lights out on the Cowboys before we even get to the month of December?
Absolutely. Mail it in. I'd be telling Dak, go and join the local country club, get the golf clubs out of the closet there, because the Cowboys have no shot in trying to turn this thing around, especially starting here with the Philadelphia Eagles leading them in to the second half of the regular season. 3-5 for the year, 0-3 at Jerry's house, Jerry's World at AT&T Stadium. What happened to the fortress that we're expected to see in the regular season? They can't even show up for the regular season, Donnie. Go figure.
Buy some curtains for AT&T Stadium, too. Keep the sun out of there. We're talking more football next.
Are they definitely done with Daniel Jones from this point? And any shot that Dable is off the sidelines, meaning he gets fired before next season?
They have a general manager in Joe Shane. Every big move has to get approval by ownership. So, look, the bottom line is they don't know who their future quarterback is past this season. Tommy DeVito's clearly not the answer. They don't have it. Drew Lock's not the answer.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
Right here with you on Pro Football Today on SportsGrid. Odds in motion, trying to see what lines have moved throughout the week.
Never felt more comfortable in the set than I do for this year. I am ready. I'm just getting angry. The hot takes are going to be here all long, people. What in the world is going on in Miami, Dom?
It's not particularly anything to shy away from just because many people are on top of it.
Hot take.
I think this line is asking you once again to take the Orleans.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
A lot of concern, I would say, for Georgia in Carson Beck. 3 interceptions. Once again, his third 3-interception game in the last 5 for UGA.
You can argue if they had Alex Orji as their starting quarterback for Georgia, they would be perfect and unbeaten right now just by not turning the football over and running it with your talented backfield.
The early line, only on SportsGrid.
What can you say about Hunter? Besides the fact that he's got to be healthy. Remember, he had the shoulder injury that kind of limited him at, once he got to the end of the season. 17.9, 10.9 last year, and he should be, as usual, a double-double machine. He's got to be able to continue to show the ability to try and shoot the ball from 3.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
Rosters are set the rest of the way, Dubsy. No more trades being made. Why? Because the trade deadline in the NFL was yesterday. Teams are set up for their playoff surges or also for their futures by taking away talent to get some extra draft capital for the next couple of years. The one thing we can look at and say at the FanDuel Sportsbook, the Kansas City Chiefs are good. How good? We'll debate that a little bit later in the show, but they are the leaders right now in the clubhouse for the odds market to win the Super Bowl this season at a plus 420 price. They're followed closely by the best team right now in the NFC, the Detroit Lions at a plus 480 price, the Ravens at plus 650, the Bills at plus 850, and then the first team at 10 to 1 or less is the San Francisco 49ers. Dubsy, you know me. I love to ask you this question first. Do you agree Kansas City Chiefs, FanDuel Sportsbook, the odds favorite to win the Super Bowl?
No, I don't think they should be. I get it. They're undefeated. They're in search of a third consecutive Lombardi. I think the Ravens are the best team in the NFL right now. The Kansas City Chiefs continue to welcome in any of these easy beats in trying to lose a game late on Sunday. So I think the Kansas City Chiefs are a little vulnerable. I think DeAndre Hopkins looked fantastic. I'll go on the flip side and say D-Hop looked like he was back to prime years there, and that's certainly going to be a great offensive weapon for him. But I think the Lions are a little more loaded, and I think the Baltimore Ravens, with Lamar Jackson having an MVP style of season, King Henry arguably one of the best years that we've seen from a running back, and some of the other pieces they've got around them there as well, Donnie. I would say the Baltimore Ravens right now are the best team in football going into Week 10, so I think the odds makers are off at plus 630 there, but they have to do this, Donnie. The Chiefs, they're the reigning champs. They're undefeated. What could go wrong?
If I look at and optimistic, right? There's a reason why the betting markets have them at a plus 420 price and being the favorites. They have Andy Reid, they have Patrick Mahomes, they're somewhat getting healthy, the offense looking a little bit better, but every single game is the same, it feels like. We're so talented here. If we get down, we'll score a touchdown, but if we're up a touchdown, we take the foot off the gas pedal. And also what's factoring into this is home field advantage throughout with Kansas City and the AFC, Dubsy, is really setting themselves up for, which means in the playoffs, you have to go through Arrowhead, through Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes. Then once you get to the Super Bowl, yes, you're going to get a really good football team, but it's not as if the Chiefs are showing like, hey, this is really neat here. We finally got to the Super Bowl. Like, no, they're looking for a three-peat here. They're expected to win the Super Bowl. I don't mind them at a plus 420 price. And again, we're going to debate if they're actually the best team in football, but in the odds market and the way the season is going to shape up, they're probably going to get to the Super Bowl, and that's half the battle. Let's slide it down just a little bit because you know my affinity for the Detroit Lions. I think they're coming out of the NFC, and they're going to challenge the victor of the AFC. But I agree with you, too. The Ravens probably, for me, are the best team in the AFC, but they do have their slip-up moments like going on the road and losing to Cleveland, which they had no business doing. You just can't have those slip-ups like we saw from them last year in the AFC Championship game against the Kansas City Chiefs. They should have put them away and went to the Super Bowl and probably have another Lombardi. But the question for me is not the Ravens or the Bills. It's the 10 to 1 price on the San Francisco 49ers, who get a lot of love still in the betting markets because they are a talented team. They have the Buccaneers on deck this weekend on the road. The Buccaneers are really banged up, but showed a lot of fortitude in that primetime football game going to overtime against the Kansas City Chiefs. Then they take on the Seahawks, the Packers, the Bills. It's not an easy schedule. Talk to me, Dubsy, about the 49ers and that 10 to 1 price. Do you believe that's correct?
I think it's a good price. It's good value, and they certainly have the cattle to lean on if they can get back up to full health. The mail coming across is CMC getting set to make his return there, so that's going to be a fantastic weapon that they can lean on. But I tell you what, to miss this kind of time in the regular season, he's going to be a little rusty and trying to get it back up to speed, and they ask so much. So for the 49ers sitting there at plus 1,000, 10 to 1, that's a really good price, but I don't think it's the best price coming out of the NFC West. I think it's the Rams, the absolute long shot Los Angeles Rams, who could be getting set to upset the bookies here in the odds makers. That's the team I'd absolutely look at here, where there's a lot of parity in the division. The conference, I believe, if you're looking outside of the top choices and the Commanders and the Detroit Lions, I think that's the price play and the value play for me. They've got the weapons, Donnie. They've absolutely got it in spades. And on the defensive side, I feel like they've exceeded on that front as well, especially being a year removed from Aaron Donald. They have not lost a step there. So we saw it the same last year. This is when the Rams start to find their offensive stride, and they are still sneaking way under the radar, not big on the Cardinals. The 49ers, I think their record tells us enough. I just don't think they're going to turn this thing around, Donnie. I had such big expectations at the start of the year. I just think injuries are working against them, and ultimately you need to be in good health to make a bit of a push.
I love to see that, Dubsy. My exact question to you is actually going to be, give me a firecracker long shot, and you end up giving me a dynamite stick, which I like even more at this point. Go 55-1. Yes, hit that dynamite at that point. But by the way, Dubsy, a little disappointed. This team called the Pittsburgh Steelers sitting at 35-1. That's where we should have been going. But you know where we're going now? Hour number 2 coming up next. Buy or sell? Let's let the debates begin. We'll be right back.